Computer. Okay, we are back. We took our little break. And in the meantime, you didn't get to see it, but I got to talk with Mrs. Quarterbin, which was a delight. And
A vast improvement.
to the male Quarterbin, yeah. And, you know, she and I might gang up on this guy and beat him up. Who knows? So just don't go walking down a dark alley with me or I'll get you. I'll get you. Okay. You know, there is one story. I felt really bad that one day that I came to church with you and I had to leave where I was early to make it. And your wife asked about coffee and I felt like I was short with her. I was like, I don't drink coffee because I was, you know, tired and everything. And then I felt bad. Like I didn't mean to be that rude, but I think it was, she understood. And you also put her up to it.
I have no recollection, no idea what were you even there? I don't remember. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Whew. Okay. So we are going to talk. Oh my gosh. We're going to talk Officer Down now. We're going to review it. And so how I have it laid out is I've got certain talking points per issue and then overall talking points, which of course our number one overall talking point has to be what? Because you're on here. What are we going to talk about for sure since you're on here?
The price.
No!
the quarter
what
bin price.
Do I always say, and then I mention your name? I say,
hair.
Oh, yes, there we go. We will be talking about Barbara Gordon's hair. Okay. So
what do you think her hair's like here during quarantine? I mean, are the roots coming out? I mean, is it natural color? I mean, is there some enhancement?
Are you saying that she's not a natural redhead?
I'm just saying it might. I'm saying in some, it's a little more red sometimes, a little more orange sometimes.
Oh,
is there a little bit? And then how does it look now? Is it extra long? Is it naturally curly? These are I'm here for this reason.
It's a good question. And then someone tagged me on Twitter recently. I don't know who it was, so forgive me. And they sent me an image and the coloring was purple black-esque. Like that was just the type of coloring that they did. And so, yeah, she's got all sorts of styles. I feel like in quarantine, she's grown it out. It's probably longer than shoulder length now. And then the bangs would probably be the greatest change. Like maybe she can actually like sweep them away. She wouldn't have bangs.
Or is she trimming those during the quarantine? Like some, you could do that at home.
That's
from what I hear. From what I hear.
Yeah, he doesn't take that sort of advice. Okay. There were some fun details that I found on this one. For instance, as Batman was listening to all of the different activities that were going on, I noticed that one of them said that there were 3 naked GSU students in Robinson Park. And my immediate thought was, isn't Poison Ivy still in Robinson Park?
That's a good point.
And shouldn't you, actually maybe not be there. But the bulk of what I would like to talk about, which is funny because it's this first issue, is actually his speech about the handcuffs and the keys that he gives them. And I was going to put this on Goodreads that I was reading this. And this is why I have Goodreads, because sometimes I forget that I've read something and I was going to put want to read, but it said you read it in 2017. So I thought, okay, I'm glad I remember. But yeah, when this came up, I was like, wow, this is pretty relevant to now. And I thought it'd be good to potentially discuss this. So he says, I mean, it's his retirement party, or not, it's his birthday party. Sorry, it's his birthday party. People are giving him gifts. And then he does something that most people don't do, which he gives them a gift. And it is, in fact, the key, because everyone loses theirs, I think it is. So he says, what's the one piece of equipment you can never find when you need it? And everyone says handcuff keys. And then, but that's not the only reason, ladies and gentlemen, this key represents your power. More than the badge, more than the gun, the handcuff is the symbol of our authority. And then someone asks, explain, please. Sorry, I have to go through. There's Batman stuff in between. I'm talking about the source of our power. When all is said and done, we, the police, have really only one power. And one guy says, the law. Sure, not the law, Detective Burke. I'm talking about the power of arrest. We are the only people in this free nation who have the power to deprive a citizen of their freedom, of their liberty. The only people with the authority to hold another against their will. And then Crispus Allen says, the theft of freedom. Not theft, Crispus, but rather removal. And yes, when you think about it, that's an awesome responsibility. Not talking about some street perp. I'm talking about arresting some guy in front of his friends and the like. That's the moment you realize the power. And then I guess he talks about something that happened before, which I guess actually is the connection to the guy he's talking about, isn't it? Because he says, oh, long ago when I was young, I'm talking when I was on the job in Chicago, I wasn't even a lieutenant yet, working on this lead I had in the Vittoni family. Long story short, got a lead. The guy running numbers in the loop worked him for a couple months building a case. He was a scale, sold dope on the side, ran around on his wife, not a nice guy. And he did, Bullock says, sounds like he got what was owed him. Jim says he did. He deserved to go down, no question. But he had a family, wife, kid. They were crying when I put the cuffs on. So that's actually, I'm glad I'm rereading this because there's our guy that we didn't really know.
Laying the groundwork.
Yep. It wasn't the first family I broke up, but it changed how I saw the job. And I feel like that. And so he says, if we forget that, basically, that there are families involved, that we forget that at our peril. And I could go on, but I think that gives a sense of that whole speech, which I feel like, I mean, to spoil, I guess, my thoughts on that, I felt like it was a really well written speech. Do you have thoughts on what he's saying and how it was set up?
I mean, I think that in general, I think the main core of these writers, Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker and Chuck Dixon, this is a Rucka script, but I think they really know this stuff well, both from the construction of the crime, in the police detail, and then I think also being able to give that sort of balanced portrayal of what the duties and responsibilities of a individual, police officer. One of the classes I teach is government and business, and one of the early topics we talk about is sort of the power dynamics between businesses and government. You see sort of what's more scary, a corrupt business or a corrupt government, and sort of no matter how big and scary a business might be, they actually can't deprive you of your freedom. But the sheriff's deputy hired one day before in the smallest town in the middle of somewhere with 7 residents can take away your freedom. Everything that government does eventually comes down to with the force of a gun.
Yeah.
Through law enforcement. I mean, it's the more laws you have, the more enforcement you have to have. Those things run together, and the power of even the lowest down on the totem pole, a police officer, law enforcement officer, has a lot of power.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I feel, we're really focused, especially in these current times. I think that this story resonates, especially this speech that Jim gives. And you do think about the violence the potential violence that they have because of the gun as a symbol of that. But to look at this handcuff that seems more or less innocuous and show that actually look at how much power this object has, I thought was really interesting and a great way to go about talking about that. And I mean,
we use that phrase more for prison, but lock them up and throw away the key.
Yeah.
But certainly the metaphor
absolutely
applies with handcuffs as well.
And it's a bit, I feel like there might be some symbols there that people lose that key. So just like, what does that mean for the person who's actually in handcuffs? You've lost it. Does that mean that I no longer have that ability to even be freed from this? And then I love that Jim, and then of course the writers talk about that each of these people, no matter what type of scumbag they were, because that's certainly how he portrayed that guy, they are somebody to someone else, or there's some sort of connection, a son or a brother. And that's, I think, what we forget about. We only see the crime. We don't necessarily see the people. So I felt like this was a great speech and a great way to start off this particular story.
Agreed.
And I'll also say, because you were talking about Greg Rucka, that I love, now I've forgotten what it's called.
Gotham Central.
Yes, thank you.
Which is him and Brubaker, right? This is both of them.
Yes.
So I
And
mean,
so,
this is, to some extent, this is the tryout book.
yeah,
I mean, this is
absolutely.
the proof of concept.
Yeah, and
And
it works. And yeah, we can save that discussion, I think, for our
yeah.
overall, but like this is, you're getting a sense for what that is. Yeah, thoughts on this particular issue? That was the main discussion point I wanted for this one, but what do you think about this one?
I guess there's one sort of more meta comic thing, and it really doesn't have the effect in this case as much because it's called Officer Down. That's what the story is. But I've recently become passionate about covers that give away not just what happens in a comic, but the literal last page of the comic. And I mean, obviously, in this case, you're starting a long story arc. It's a little bit different, but we do have the cover of Gordon being shot, is what the cover is, and that happens on, again, literally the last. That's also the last image of the book. So generally speaking, that would annoy me, but I certainly give this one a pass because that's the point.
Yeah,
it's the jumping off point.
Yeah,
it's not a spoiler. You're being set up for that.
So do you prefer to have covers that focus on another detail in the story, or do you want covers that don't necessarily have anything to do with the story?
You can go either way, but I mean, for this one, I mean, theoretically, you could have used that same art style. I mean, none of the other covers really reveal like a twist.
Yeah.
They give you a sense of what's going to happen in the story, sense of who the characters are, sense of what's going to happen, a tease more, and they certainly all are poster worthy type of images. Again, I'm not criticizing this cover in particular for what it's doing. Again, Officer Down is the name of the story. That concept is all throughout it. It just poked at me just a little bit.
Oh,
I've been ranting about this recently elsewhere.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll have to listen to that. Are you doing an episode on that?
You'd listen?
Yeah.
Really?
Is it? Yeah.
Is that a promise? Is
Well,
that a promise?
Yeah, as long as you send the episode, like the number and everything, to me when I log on to iTunes next. So the backstory with this, and then I'll get back to why I'm asking you about the comics, the covers and everything, is that I don't listen to other people's podcasts. And it's not because I'm trying to disrespect them or I don't care for them. It's just like, well, number one, I've been listening to more audiobooks when I've been doing stuff. And the only podcast, oh gosh, he's crying. I'm so sorry. There. Doom will be with you. Doom is eternal. Yeah, the only one is Who's Who, and I haven't listened to that for months. I haven't gone on to iTunes or anything. So that's the only reason. So unless someone like specifically says you should listen to this one episode, then it's just hard for me. I just don't have my iPod. But back to the I would like to hear your reasons. The reason why I was asking is that's the opposite of what I feel. Now, I don't necessarily want the last story point to be revealed. Of course, we knew Officer Down going in that something was going to happen, but I really liked in the Bronze and Silver Age where the covers were literally like a pull from inside the story, or that it talks about the story, because the ones that I haven't liked were covers that had absolutely nothing to do, right, or was like a reverse, or not a reverse, they were trying to trick you, or I don't know. There's just something on there that's like, that doesn't even happen. Yeah. So those are
there's a spectrum.
There is. There. Yeah. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. And maybe I'll write in too. Who knows? I mean, this is big.
the basic point was that the later in the issue, the later in the story, what you're putting on the cover is, the worse it is.
Okay. I see. Yeah. So I'll
like this is supposed to, like if the last couple of pages are intended to be a dramatic reveal.
Okay. Yeah. Because that's I mean, it's basically a spoiler right there on the cover. Spoiler, I should have said.
Spoiler.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on to part 2, and we can talk about. We'll talk about both Robin and Batgirl, but we can split them apart. So I first want to see what you thought about the art of Robin.
I did not make any specific notes about it.
Okay.
So is that a good sign or a bad sign?
I don't know. It was of all of them, and they were different. Obviously, they were different books, so they had different styles. But I liked this the least. So I just wondered if that was me or not.
I'm not familiar with these artists.
Yeah.
Terribly well.
It's I don't know. They just seem almost Picassian. Is that Picassoian? I don't know how you would say it. But I'm just on page 2, and I think that's Montoya. Like, just her face is really, really thin and long. I don't know. And I have to look at Babs too. Obviously, I like to look at how Babs is portrayed because I just feel like
this is very angular, very strange. Everything's a little exaggerated.
Yeah.
Is that Harvey? His mouth? Yeah, it's very strange. You're right.
I just, so of all of them, I mean, Catwoman looks really evil, which we'll talk about that. That could be potentially purposeful. But yeah, I just liked this one the least. I felt it was unattractive, which I don't like to say, because I mean, these are artists, and you know, I respect the hard job, but this was just not the art style for me.
What do you think of Babs' hair?
Babs' hair, yeah. So it's pulled back.
There's a lot of brown mixed in with the red. Not sure about that. I'm just
shorter, and it's got the headband, which we've seen before in Nightwing. So that kind of tracks with Nightwing, but it's not consistent with other issues that we've got in this.
Right, and then consistent within what else we've said about all of the characters here. It's sort of very sharp.
Yeah.
And angular. But again, that's not unique to Barbara in this case.
Absolutely. So since we're on the Barbara topic, talking about her, and I love that scene with her and Renee, and that she checks in with Renee, and that's just like Barbara. That absolutely Barbara's going through something. This is terrible for her, but she's looking out for other people. What do you think about how Babs was portrayed in this issue?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Babs sort of reminds me of my wife. Because everywhere we go, there's someone who knows her. And that person always, without fail, likes her. And I think Barbara's sort of the same way. Like, everybody knows her, and nobody has a bad thing to say about her. And here we sort of were the fruits of being a good friend.
Yeah.
Building relationship, building a support team.
Yeah.
Being that for other people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when she's in need, that you've built up that social capital.
Yeah.
And they run to her aid because they love her.
And there's certainly, and I don't think it's this issue with the Batman thing, but it's interesting the differences between how those two react, and we can get more into that. But Babs is very much someone who I think feels the need to be solid and a good foundation for people, because other people are freaking out. Yeah. And so she needs to stay calm. And so I think that's certainly something that she sees here. I
think within the structure of the greater Bat family, Bat world, I think the Gordons are to some extent sort of the glue that hold the whole thing together. Barbara in one way, and then the commish, in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the Dick and Babs scene, where she asks for him, where's Dick? And then he arrives and goes right to her. Of course, it got to my shipper heart for this too. Okay.
Yeah, whatever.
Oh my gosh, that's because you are unfeeling. Does Victor Von Doom have anyone? Oh yeah, he dated that lady with the long black hair. The Contessa? Is that her name?
There is that, but obviously
and Sue Storm.
His one true love.
Yeah.
So, let's be honest.
Namors.
Let's be honest. Susan Storm Richards Von Doom. It's a pretty great name. It just rolls right off the tongue.
Right. Anywho.
Once you go Latvian,
you. There's nothing to rhyme with that. Once you go Doom, maybe you don't I don't know. Though, as a side, boy, we're getting off track. I will say that if I were to want her to have an affair with anyone, which sounds really terrible, I feel like it'd be Namor.
Who are? Do I even know you? What?
I guess not. There's just one scene in Civil War that my heart was filled
Look,
with the butterflies.
I think the main thing that we've learned
Yeah.
from Sue,
Why are you
let
getting your scarf out?
let's just say Sue is willing
Yeah.
to eye the field. And I'm not saying that says anything bad about Reed
Yeah.
Richards, but clearly that says terrible things about Reed Richards.
Well, this is not the fan. I don't know. It was my fault that we got off on it, but I will say that I feel like he's a neglectful husband to a certain extent. I mean, he is
Certain extent, 100% extent.
Oh my gosh. I don't know.
I don't throw around phrases like terrible human being all that often, but when I do, I apply them to Reed Richards.
Okay, so anyway, so she has that freedom. I mean, all of my love for her and respect for her comes from Civil War when she wrote that note to him is like, I've got to get out of here. Because I completely respected that. But anyways, yeah, well, I mean, he totally married up. I mean, in my opinion. But we're back to Officer Down. Sorry about that. Yeah, I know. Take deep breaths. But now we get into this. I don't know if what your feelings are. I guess I'll get a sense of it with Batman as a jerk. But it's going to be a theme in this particular episode. So it's a good thing Donovan's not here. So just be prepared, listeners, if you roll your eyes when I do this. But here's jerk moment number one with Batman backhanding Dick and nearly choking a perp to death. I mean, do you feel like these are reasonable responses? And the obvious answer is no, but reasonable in terms of who Batman is and the circumstances surrounding why he's doing it. Does it make sense that, yes, he would act out in this or lash out in this way?
He's a passionate man. I mean, look, he's grieving, he's angry. So, that's obviously the attempt at a justification for it. But now I like, she's not in this, but I like the Huntress as a character. And what I like about the Huntress is that she is someone harsher than Batman. Like, she is someone who Batman says, come on, reel it in, Helena, reel it in a little bit, okay? Just bring it back just a little bit. So I like that there is somebody who is rougher, tougher, meaner than he is. But when he has to, he can go there. Yeah. He's not. I like him being not the Boy Scout that Superman is.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they've different approaches, different lifestyles, different worldviews.
Yeah. I feel like, the choking the perp close to, right? Or beating someone up. Yeah, absolutely. I've probably seen it before from other media things, but Batman, I could definitely see that happening. But the one that just really gets to me is him like hauling off and hitting Dick. I felt like that was uncalled for, and there's not even an apology or like any sort of look of remorse, just because Dick got in the way, which that's the problem that I have occasionally with Batman. Because yeah, I can totally see the passion that you're talking about, but that's his number one guy. He's been with him, and that's what you do. And I just wonder, what if it were someone else who was there? What if Tim were with him, or Cass? Like, would he have done that? So yeah. So I mean, I feel like
But is that the person that you can be the most unvarnished, fully released version of yourself?
Yeah, that is true.
Maybe he probably would have held back for anyone else, perhaps.
Yeah, you might be right. Yeah,
this was the chance to let it out.
Yeah, being
inappropriately.
Yes.
In case that wasn't clear.
No, yeah. I can see that. That's a good argument to make. That was him being vulnerable there, and he trusts Dick to show that vulnerable side of him. Yeah. Okay. Anything else on Robin 86? Thoughts on that one? Okay, so then, yeah, same time of part 2 is, of course, Batgirl number 12. And yeah, my question for this one was, where did that rain come from? That's the only
Oh, that's
thing.
true. If it is the same time, yeah,
Yeah, it's the same
Brubaker and Dixon were
time.
not chatting with each other,
Yeah,
or the artists were thinking, "Ooh, it's a Batman book. It's probably got to be rain.
I
We have to make
know.
it moody in some way."
Yeah, that's as far as I could tell of yeah, why it was
But I will
this
say
sort of
this:
thing.
I mean, this might be one spot where this isn't the case, but overall, and I don't know these editors, Idelson and Schreck, very well, but boy, did they pull this thing together. It is start to finish. I'm jumping ahead, but it is an impressive feat
Mm,
to have done this. Didn't this come out at all in the same month, or close to it? This came
yeah,
out. This whole storyline came out pretty quickly.
yeah.
So keeping all of that in line from editorial is pretty impressive. And
Mm-hmm.
if you let it slide with some rain once,
It's
I'm
okay.
willing to give him a pass.
Yeah,
It's an A instead of an A plus.
gotcha. I will note at least that I found it fun when she enters the clock tower, and of course Oracle has her security system, which is always beefy, and the recognition is Cassandra's. So that's actually the first time that Cassandra herself has said that name, because in the past Barbara has called her
Oh,
that
that's
or
right. Hmm.
slipped
Hmm.
slipped when talking to her, like, oh, maybe she doesn't know that yet. But yeah, so now Cass actually calls herself Cassandra. And the only other strange thing might be that it's written as if Batgirl hasn't had any interactions with Catwoman in the past, whereas she actually did. She went on this mission with her, and then Catwoman tries to trick her, and it doesn't work. So this is just written as if, Catwoman's this person she had heard of, but now she's doing research. So I almost wish that there would have been
Mm-hmm.
some connection or internal, like, she didn't seem like the lethal type, that sort of thing, which that was a big theme anyways, people thinking that Catwoman's not lethal.
This was I mean, when this storyline originally came out, I was out of comics. I was out
Oh,
of comics in mid to late 90s up to about 2008, 2010, whatever. And so Cassandra Cain in general happened while I was out of comics. So
mm,
I know a lot of people love her, and I don't have a lot of firsthand experience reading her books.
yeah. Yeah, a fun story, but it doesn't add as much in pushing forward the narrative. But it's good, I think, to include her, since, of course, she
Mm-hmm.
shows up with the Bat family. So to see what she was doing on the side. And yeah, I mean, the whole thing about looking out for or finding her different hideouts, and then the trap, and the people that come for her, which is really interesting. So
It was action packed.
it was action packed. Yeah. I guess they had to kind of make sense of having a tie-in potentially. So, I think Birds of Prey. Okay, so this is the big one, because once we get to Catwoman, I have some info to share. Yes. Okay, here's Bat Jerk. This is when we'll really talk about it. But do I have any questions before Bat Jerk? Oh,
Well,
okay, question.
I was going to ask if where during this time Barbara got her extensions for her hair, because it seems to have grown a lot in just a couple of days. I know
Yeah.
that's I'm here. I mean, obviously
See?
you can see why I'm here.
Yeah, yeah,
Those of you
yeah. No, that
enough on
is.
YouTube, you can see my
Gosh.
expertise in this area. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, it was quite a little different.
it is. Yeah,
I mean, we sort of joke about it, but every character has a character design. There's
yeah.
like but it, she seems to be quite varied in how
It's
she is
very
portrayed.
true.
Maybe it's because I listen to your show faithfully
Thank you.
that I that I notice it more about her than other characters. But it seems that
Yeah.
every artist decides to do their own thing.
It seems like it. I mean, I just feel like Barbara Gordon pre-Oracle has long hair, and then Barbara Gordon as Oracle is more of a bob, and it could be shoulder
Mm-hmm.
length or above. But yeah, anything that's like flapper that short, or here it kind of seems, what is this here? Yeah.
I know I
Oh,
can't get
he's showing us.
the
Yeah.
zoom very
Yeah,
good,
because they can't
but
see.
it's very, very
But
long,
yeah,
very long.
yeah, below her shoulder it seems just like
Mhm.
her. That's her COVID hair right there.
I mean, it's like she's been in lockdown for
Yep.
3 months and is only a couple of days away from getting an illegal black market haircut or something. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know who that would be referring to, but
Yeah. Yeah. So one of my questions is, do you think it's reasonable that people suspect Catwoman for the crime?
I like first off, I ship the Bat and the Cat. Just
Same.
draw that right here. I also ship Bat and Talia. Just don't
Oh my.
don't tell them to.
Okay.
It might get ugly, but it's 80 years, okay? I mean, things, for Batman, he's been around a long time.
Yeah.
Do not, by the way, ship Batman and Sue Storm. That would not
Yikes.
work. I'm just throwing that out. Just throwing that out for the next crossover. That would not be good. But in this era, yeah, Catwoman, I don't think she would do it, but
Yeah.
I guess she had someone dressed up. Wasn't she seen
Yeah.
sort of at the beginning? Though that's sort of a strange clue when you
Yeah.
find out what actually happened. But
Yes. Yeah. I think, my knee jerk is that Catwoman's not lethal. And even some of the Bat family are saying like this doesn't fit her MO, but Batman is saying, prison has changed her. And so I guess it's his knee jerk. This came up in the previous episode of just like, there's not necessarily a trust there, which I guess I can't expect as much trust for Catwoman as I would Azrael, which was last one. But I did reach out to Josh Bertoni because I felt like he might know what happened because I wasn't reading Catwoman. I don't read Catwoman. So only when there are crossovers like this. And I said, what happened? Basically, do you know the circumstances of Catwoman's arrest and time in prison pre-Officer Down? He said he read that a few years ago. His details are fuzzy, but she was caught and refused to give her real name. So she was sentenced as a Jane Doe. Her fingerprints had been scrubbed from every system, etc. She took a plea deal thinking she could avoid jail, but her public defender or lawyer, I don't have it in front of me, tricked her. So she was jailed. She escaped and was pretty mad at Gordon for it. This was shortly after No Man's Land, if I recall. It was a big deal because in post-crisis continuity, Catwoman had never been arrested before. And I asked if anything happened to her in prison because it seemed like something must have for this to go on. She was very unhinged when she got out and went after Gordon with a vengeance. I don't remember anything traumatic happening in prison, but she was very violent afterwards. So just to give a sense of who this Catwoman is, because they mention at least a couple times that prison changed her. She's a different person. So so I guess with that, if you've got that detail, then maybe you would be. But we as the readers have actually seen that the shots came from behind and not in front. And I did forget to say in that issue that I thought it was funny, though I don't know if it's supposed to be, where Gordon shoots and you realize he probably shot because he was startled and he had his hand on the gun. And she says, "You shot me?" I just thought it was a funny, like, how dare you? It finally happened. Okay. Are we at my bat jerk question? I have to see. Trying to warm up to it.
No,
Okay.
I do have one other comment here
Oh,
on
please.
Birds of Prey before you get that, and that is that these jewels that they're worried about, that might be that using as a lure for Catwoman, these valuable emeralds or whatever, they are on loan from the country of Real Asia.
Yes.
So they are real Asian.
Oh.
Real Asian.
Yeah.
What? I mean, come on. Come up with something better than that.
Yeah, I don't know. We only have so many.
Generistan. You could come up with something.
We only have so many fake DC locations to do. Yes, before the bat jerk, I do say they have the you're waiting for it, but I just found another one. We're warming up the bat jerk question. When they have each of them, or she, I think Barbara does this, has each of the Bat family members go off. You've got Tim on his own with a bunch of goons. You have Cass on her own. And then you have Nightwing and Azrael paired up together. Was that odd for you? I mean, you send out Tim and he's got these huge goons, but no, Azrael and Nightwing deal with an art dealer. I thought, well, they can't be on their own, and I don't know. That was bizarre for me. What do you think about that?
Well, Oracle maybe a little off her game.
I
Doesn't
guess that's
trust
true.
either.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I'm not. No.
Man. Okay, so here is the Batgirl question, as I'll say. So this scene, I'm on page 4, I guess it is. She says, "You've given us our marching orders. What are you going to do?" And Batman says, "I'm staying right here." Barbara says, "You could be a lot of help." Batman says, "I trained all of you. You each have your specialties. You can coordinate this as well as I could." And she says, "He's my father." Then there's silence in the next panel as she looks away, kind of like annoyed, like her hand is by her eye, and then he's just looking at Jim. And then she rolls away and says, "That's it then. We do your bidding and you get to wallow in grief. Maybe you'd better think about changing your specialty, Bruce. You don't handle the grieving thing so well." This actually really teed me off because, gosh, I just feel like he's so selfish. I mean, that's my father, and I can't be with him, and you can't be the one to relay those. What did you think about this whole scene here?
Wallowing in grief
Yeah.
is Batman. This is not a revelation, right? Wallowing in grief is Batman.
Yeah.
And Jim Gordon was one of Batman's father figures before he was ever Barbara's father figure.
Oh my gosh.
No, I'm just that's the best defense I can.
So your explanation is that he has first rights to Jim.
Batman has a lot of associates.
Wow.
He has a lot of family. He has very few friends. And we have to remember the very first panel of the very first Batman story ever was Bruce Wayne and Commissioner Gordon. That was the very first scene of any Batman comic ever. And so their relationship is literally the longest lasting relationship that the character has. So I think he feels it not in the same way that Barbara does, obviously, but to me, the Commissioner and Alfred are in different ways Bruce's father figures.
Yeah.
So he is taking it personally.
Yeah. And, I can see that. And I don't want to downplay his grief or anything, but I just feel like he handles the interaction with Barbara poorly. And
yes,
he should have
again, it's
so that's why
it's sort of two different things.
Yeah.
I think it is written beautifully. And I think it is a great scene of Batman acting badly. So I just want to clarify that. I think it is a terrific scene.
Yeah.
I like it. I don't like what's happening, but I like it. I like it.
I get that.
Reading about these fictional characters in this fictional world. It's pretty great.
Yeah. And I'm just heavily critical on Batman, as Donovan is well aware. This just
and to some extent there is the sense of this hardly ever actually applies, but in this sense perhaps Batman is thinking of himself as the general, that he doesn't need to go out into the field of battle. That he really does have these other folk, his trained team, his trained soldiers.
I just feel like there is some other story, but I can't put my finger on it, where something happened with someone close to them and he denied anyone else from getting involved. And he's like, only I will do this. And so those are interesting dichotomies of Batman. But, as someone who is pro, and she's my number one girl, just seeing that happen, and that there's not that space for her physically, literally or figuratively, for her to be there, I think is really interesting. And so that's when I go back
I think it's very sad for Barbara.
Oh yeah.
I think it's a heartbreaking moment for sure.
Yeah. Yep. I go back to then that comment I made before where she needs to be that solid foundation for others because they can't handle it. And that's true
Right.
here. Like, I
Oh
think
yeah.
she
Yeah.
could break down here. I think she could scream at him. But I think in that silent panel, you have that moment of this guy's not going to budge and it's not going to help for me to do anything. And so I need to be that back for everyone to hang on. And so I think that this just attests to what a strong character that Barbara is and a character that she
Yeah. I mean,
has. And yeah.
one of my notes for the story is Babs is very good at her job, and the
Yep.
team is making progress.
Mm-hmm. The team is making, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I guess we could say, Batman puts his trust in her. So, maybe there's that positive action right there that he trusts her to get the job done. Anything else on Birds of Prey number 27?
Mm-mm.
So then we get to Catwoman 90. And this was the only one that I felt like had a almost in medias race moment where it just is like really in the middle of things. And they're all chasing Catwoman. What do you think about this chase scene? Why does every member of the Bat family need to be there? Does that just attest to Catwoman's skill in order to corner her?
Yeah, probably. And actually, this is the issue that I have. Babs is very good at her job, and the team
Oh,
is
okay.
making progress. That applies to
That's
this
true.
one
Yeah.
because she is coordinating this entire thing. And on an issue by issue basis, having an issue that is basically a chase scene,
Yeah.
sort of as a standalone, you know, isn't necessarily the greatest, but it's whatever, chapter 5 out of 8 or 8
Yeah.
or wherever this fits in. It was a good action. I mean, it's action set piece for the sort of taking the big picture of the storyline.
Yeah, absolutely. And I talked about Catwoman looking evil in that Robin issue. And there's one panel with her, I've got it on page 12, where they're interrogating her. And she says, I don't have a motive. I don't want Gordon dead. I hate his guts, but I want him around to see what I'm doing to his precious city. And just like her face is like the most evil that I've ever seen her. And it's kind of like the quintessential like evil female, and got that spark coming out there and her pointed eyebrows and everything. So that was certainly well done there.
I
And
mean,
yeah, some good art moments.
that is probably as much posturing
Yeah.
as revealing a true feeling as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing, though, that did rub me the wrong way, and I wondered if you felt it as well, is Tim's sense of humor in this particular issue seems inappropriate in the sense of we're in this serious situation. I've got to find this now. And he's making light of it. Gosh, it's going to be hard to find it. I think we have to. Oh, I've got one on page 15. I think there's another joke, but I can't remember. This was, she said, Catwoman tells him she knows where the gun is and she can let them know, and then they'll let her go, hopefully. And then Tim says, we're going to have to check it out anyways. Besides, if she's lying, we can always capture her again. And he's laughing, and then she comes after him, and Cass restrains her. But I felt like there was another one that was in the beginning when they were chasing. I don't know if I can find it though. But anyway, I mean, just humor that's within this, whereas everyone else is pretty serious and, trying to get this particular job done. Oh, wasn't it with the charge? Oh, yes. So page 10, they've charged her in that net. And then he says she's down, gang, at the bottom. Guess we can forego plan B. And it's Rooster of the Sea. So I guess he jokingly had some tuna there. So is this just, it's Tim's character and he's trying to lighten the mood. And so that's okay. Or did you feel like, oh, this is kind of weird to have humor in this relatively serious storyline?
Probably a little bit of both. He seems to be the only character trying it. So that sort of gives me, it's sort of evidence that the writer was not trying to do, sort of the whole the whole the whole issue is not light like that. And again, maybe in the same way that you need the release maybe of the action sequence after the more intense emotional stuff of prior issues. Maybe someone thought, well, maybe we need to crack a few jokes here too, just as a pressure release, on the reader as much as much as anyone else. Although in both cases, kind of epic fails.
Yeah.
In terms of actually attempting humor.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree with you. I think because the other person that you could expect to be humorous would be Dick, but he's been pretty serious the entire time.
More importantly, probably Bab's best hair day.
She doesn't have many bangs, which was interesting. I was noticing that.
Yeah.
Her best of the issues that we've covered so far.
I think so. I think so.
We'll see about Nightwing. Nightwing has been pretty consistent in the art presentation of hers, which actually is the next one. Do you have any other thoughts on Catwoman number 90?
Nope.
Okay, so yeah, Nightwing, which she appears often, so it's to be expected that she would appear in this particular one as well. Yeah, there she is. Yeah, so I mean, since we're on it, what do you think about her hairstyle here? It's kind of got this weird. Actually, this is
a little bit shorter.
Yeah. The artist is different than what I've been seeing, so it kind of the art style is not my favorite. And I'm just looking at her at the computer. I'm like, that is a weird representation of Babs right there.
I mean, it's a weird representation of everybody. Again, it's to me, there's a lot of stylized aspects of everybody. And the other thing, I was listening to, I have no idea which podcast it was, but someone was complaining about in comics, seems like everyone has round glasses. Like, do you see anyone in real life with round glasses? Everyone in comics have round glasses. And then that's in the back of my head, and I'm obviously paying very close attention to Barbara's hair as the chief stylist correspondent for Batgirl to Oracle. And I noticed not only is her hair different in this one, her glasses are different in this one as well. And I think, if a character has round glasses, anyone can draw them.
Yeah.
That is probably why, as opposed to if they're rectangular or some other oblong shape, you're not going to be able to get that consistent, the angles, the shape, the size. But if it's a square or a circle, any artist can maintain that. And that, which A, might be why so many characters in comics have round glasses, and B, might be why characters without round glasses appear to have different glasses as often as they have different hairstyles.
Might be true. Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, she may have switched to her readers for this scene as well. Sometimes
that's true.
You have your backup pair. She may have run over her other pair.
Or those blue light glasses that everyone's buying since we went into online learning and teaching.
Exactly.
And things too,
exactly.
Well. Yeah. Little detail, I did love that Dick calls Babs a hero, because I feel like we don't necessarily hear that moniker for her, though we consider her that, but just like not, because I think the general thought is that someone who's out in the action is like the hero, but to have her, who does so much work behind the scenes, be called that was great. So the gun, this is a huge scene, not only because she should hate guns for obvious reasons, and she had some opportunities back in Suicide Squad to take vengeance out with the gun, but what do you think about her hesitation in handing over the gun, the smoking gun, literally? Was it reasonable for her character? And then as a second question, if she hadn't gotten the call that her dad was up, what would she have done, do you think?
I don't have a feel for that second question. That's too many hypotheticals for me. But I think hesitation is reasonable, and I think handing it over is reasonable. I think both of those steps are probably appropriate for a character.
Yeah, I see that as well. I think it's similar to she and Montoya, I think, are similar in that you've got the emotion and then you've got the reason, I think, combating. And she's so in the thick of it that the emotion, I think, is right there. And that's what's causing the hesitation. But the reason, I think, for Babs will always work out, especially if she has someone to talk to her. In the Suicide Squad, she had Amanda Waller was talking to her.
Right.
So I feel like even if something had happened to her father, she would have given it to Dick, though it may have taken more conversations, and she probably would have. That would be a terrible character arc to see what
And
that would look like. But yeah,
yeah, I think it's the other thing that this team is struggling with, the hero team, the Bat family, the Bat team is struggling with is, are we going to do this our way?
yeah,
Are we going to do this the right way? Or are we going to, this was an officer that was shot. We think an officer did the shooting. So do we let them handle it? Do we let do we let the court system handle? I mean, do we let them handle it? Do we handle it? Do we give it to Bullock and let him handle it? I mean, to some extent, you have three options there,
yeah,
right? We take revenge, we let them take revenge, or we let the system work it out.
yeah,
And usually it's two choices: the system or us. But here you sort of have the third option. Do we let Gordon's brothers and sisters in the Force work this out?
yeah.
So I think, and I think I think not handling it themselves in terms of the team vigilante, I think was probably a good call, and that's where Barbara lands.
Yeah, and doing it the way Gordon would approve of it or want it done. Yeah, absolutely. So Alfred finally leaves. What took him so long? He's like, I've had enough. You haven't become. He's a baby. Batman's a baby, and Alfred's like, I'm out. I'm done.
Well, again, we have the foster family, the foster father, the father figure, and we usually think of that from Batman's perspective, but we don't often think of it from Alfred's perspective. He's raised this boy.
Yeah.
And right now he's not making good choices.
Yeah.
And sometimes you gotta walk away and let the person figure it out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Spoilers, I think he comes back.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. And doesn't he leave him at one point during the Nightfall trilogy too?
Could be.
I feel like I remember reading all of that. But yeah, I mean, it takes a particular someone, I think, to speak truth to somebody else, and Alfred is that person. I think Alfred probably and Wesley as well are the people in Batman's lives, and then Batman's just not hearing it at this point in time.
That's certainly from a narrative or a literary perspective. It's about Batman losing to some extent both of his father figures.
Yeah.
Right? One is lying dead, and the way he's dying, and the way that he's behaving has driven the other one away.
Yeah.
So you stripped him away from both of those positive influences in his life.
Yep. Yeah. And it is, I mean, Batman really does act like a child just because he's sulking. And I mean, grief, right? So I don't want to belittle grief, but it certainly, Alfred really gets to it that everyone else is doing their job and trying to get the culprit. And here you are. What are you exactly doing? And I feel like Batman hasn't moved for however long he's been there also. And then, he also makes the joke of, if he dies, are you going to dress up like a bat and do this for the rest of your life? So it's like very cyclical,
right.
like, what's going to happen there. So,
it is in real life, I'd be hesitant to criticize the way that someone is dealing with stress or strain or grief, or say being locked down for 3 months in their house.
Yeah. Yep.
People are legitimately responding to that differently.
Yeah.
And I think giving people the grace, to do that and to not require your response to be the same as my response. There's some value in that, although obviously here we're exaggerating that, to make this literary point as well. But I would hesitate to criticize, how on an individual basis, how a friend of mine, a good friend of mine,
Yeah.
a spouse, a good friend, a child is would be dealing in the aftermath there of a
Yeah.
stressful, grief-filled situation.
Yeah. And I mean, as fans of Batman and comics, I mean, dressing up like a bat after your parents are killed, or training for that is not necessarily a reasonable response. So, I mean, it sort of is,
Yeah.
it tracks with the character
Right.
that his responses will not be necessarily be reasonable. However, much that I don't like what he's doing. So it's revealed that a cop did it. Was this anticlimactic for you? Do you feel like it fits with the story? Did you want it to be someone like really exciting and, oh, it's a shock, this is someone here, but actually, no, it's someone that volunteered post No Man's Land, and Jim has a historical connection with him.
I think in terms of, I liked it. I liked it. Again, to some extent, you're laying Gotham Central groundwork here,
Yeah.
which to me is one of the best series DC has put out.
Agreed. Yeah.
I don't know, this millennium, in the 2000s.
Ooh, yeah.
It's terrific. And
Oh, no.
so
Yeah.
again, so here they're sort of, laying the groundwork for that. And if you think about it, however many people Gotham City has, 10 million people in it, we know, we could list off what seems like an endless list of supervillains, but we'd probably struggle by the time we got into the 70s, maybe. That leaves a whole lot of other potential villains and generic bad guys, and lots of other people that can do harm to lots of other people. And certainly folks who could bear a grudge against the chief of police. It's not just Catwoman and Joker and Penguin who might be a little upset with Jim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think it was. I think to a certain extent, you might feel like it's anticlimactic because you do want it to be a famous big bad, but I think it's great that it's not because you were expecting that. And also, this is a very grounded book, and by that I mean it's like on the streets. Catwoman's really the only person that we see that you could consider, a villain in the rogue gallery. But everything else, I think, just circulates around people who are criminals on the streets, and we don't have the Jokers or the Mad Hatters or whatever. And so to have the culprit be someone from the police department keeps it really grounded. So I do like that.
And you say that, and that strikes me. Probably every one of the covers that we talked about is literally outside. Almost everyone is literally in that alleyway, or it's some version looking down on it, looking across it, but it is all literally in the street. So they're signaling that fact for us.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts on Nightwing 53?
No, again, I just like the way that the police stuff is written. You add at least whether it's verisimilitude or at least the comic book version of it.
Yeah.
Sort of the fictionalized version of it that you actually don't always get in comic books, as we were saying. If this were any other villain, Major or Minor or Kite Man or whoever it be,
Hell yeah, Kite Man. Yeah.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
It's but it's none of that, like we said.
Yeah.
And and we're not tricked into that. I mean, we're not. Maybe as Batman readers, we're sort of expecting it, and maybe the like you said, the Catwoman scenes are a nod to, yes, this is a comic book, and yes, there's a comic book villain that we are going to include, but we're going to dismiss that pretty quickly because it's something else that's going on.
Yeah, and just a note to DC Comics, this is what I want for Barbara. Like, I feel like this is the time for the Batgirl book to have something just like this, and it absolutely works. And that goes back to her time doing investigation and stuff in the Silver and Bronze Age. So that's what I would like to see. Well, you were talking about real life police work, and then we get into it big time with Detective Comics 754. The interrogation scenes. Yeah, talk about the I like to call it choreography, but the scripting and the layout and everything of those scenes. What do you think about all of that?
Solid. Again, solid. This is you're getting back to Rucka again, writing this last one. And again, that's a strength of his, whether it's his prose fiction or his comic book work, is the police stuff, the crime stuff. Again, my experience is with scenes like this is reading them or watching them. So again, it's the fictionalized version of verisimilitude or what I would expect to happen, or the techniques and process of interrogation.
I will correct you and say that Dave Philippus was the writer on this one. So are you thinking about Gotham Knights? I'm not sure
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
if Rucka does that. But I mean, the
Okay.
same thing. I mean,
Yeah.
he probably has taken his cues from Rucka potentially, but yeah, just laid out. Yeah, when I was reading it, I was about to say watching, it felt like a Law and Order scene. The first half when it was always the cops before the lawyer stuff, but just how it is choreographed with Crispus and Montoya, and then Crispus and Rich alone, good cop bad cop, you've got all that going on, the fake, we've got the stress of
Right.
You only have 12 hours with this guy, can we get a confession? Crispus hates Batman. Don't bring that into it. Then they're kind of like at the end of that time and bring it in. Yeah, it's just almost as it goes on, you kind of feel this weight and this stress of, are they going to get that conviction? And then at the very end, wasn't it, where he fakes, well, I guess it's not at the very end, but he fakes them out. And you're kind of going along like, oh, they're going to get something. Nah, I know what you're doing. I'm not going to give you anything. Just really well done. And great to see it on the inside and what these cops would do. And then as he leaves and everyone's watching him, I don't know, like high school almost, or like a player who did a terrible job in a game and is leaving the locker room, but he's walking out, and then of course Batman gets him, and he confesses to him, but that's not going to work. And then he comes to an interesting line that I want to talk about. He says, he says, "You're not going to kill me, ? You need a confession, ? And Batman says, "I'll beat it out of you if I have to." And this guy says, "Go ahead. It can't hurt any more than losing everything. Gordon did enough damage to me to last a lifetime, and now I've done the same to him." So do you think, I mean, a lot of these questions that I've asked are like, is this reasonable? But the damage to last a lifetime, I mean, do you feel like Jim's crime against Rich equates to Rich's crime against Jim?
From an objective outside reader perspective, no, but that doesn't matter. It does to him.
Yeah.
It does to him.
Yeah.
That's what counts.
Yeah. So that history, of course, it goes back to that bar scene, and that's what Jim was talking about, that he saw the mother and the child. And so this guy, he lost all of that. And so losing all of that equates to, I guess, Jim now maybe losing his life, or just being damaged enough to not, because I don't know that Jim necessarily knows that. I don't think the perp knows that Jim is going to retire at this point, but
right.
Good. It's just interesting because I wondered, like, would he have gone after Barbara? Would that have been a similar thing? But then I thought, I'm glad the writers didn't do it, because then we've got another women in refrigerators situation going on, and it's already happened to Barbara once. But yeah, it's interesting.
The thing I like in that scene is that, as you said, in the official interrogation, he knew what was going on. He knew what they needed. He knew the legal aspects, and here as well.
Yeah.
Batman beating a confession out of him is not going to stand up in court.
Yeah.
At least not in this version. In this attempt to be sort of more realistic version.
Yeah.
Of what a court system would be.
Yeah, which is, I guess, the scary.
So he has no fear of
that.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I guess that's the real world fear and power of police, is that, if they do decide to go the dark side, they know the criminal justice system and they know how far they can go without, or they know the inside track of it. So that's, he's able to do that. But it's interesting, to think about this guy. And I guess this plan had been fomenting for a long time.
I guess so.
Because he joins up during No Man's Land. And so I guess it's reasonable, because one of my questions was, wouldn't Jim have recognized this guy? Because he recognizes him from the mugshot they give him. But I think there was such an influx of volunteers that he wouldn't have foreseen that. But I guess the other question would be,
and if he's at the top of an organization with literally thousands and thousands of people,
Kenny, and he really only knows, a handful of his decorated officers. The other question, of course, would be what led him to do it at this point in time. And my assumption is just that story, because he was around there, and just maybe reliving it would have been the trigger, and like, well, I've got to get rid of this guy.
Yeah, could be.
Anything else on Detective Comics 754?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so we move on to the final part, Gotham Knights number 13.
No Babs. Why are we even talking about it? Okay, the end. Bye. Fly on, Babs lovers.
Oh, good gosh. But that was actually one of the questions that I had, the fact that there is that Barbara absence.
Right.
And I wondered why there was no scene between her and Babs regarding his retirement. Is it okay that there wasn't? We can just assume that it probably did happen. Do you think that was something that should have been in here, or is it just too filled?
You had a lot to do. You had a lot to do in this issue.
Yeah.
They had a lot to do in this issue. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What happened at the end?
Yeah, so that's actually I have that question, right? So the assumption is, I think pretty heavily, that Harvey comes back, right? Because Harvey has that threatening face, and then the quote, see you later or see you soon. I don't have it pulled up with me. And some would say, isn't that hypocritical, because Harvey was telling Renee not to do it? But we know Harvey is not always on the up and up, and we also know that he probably, or I feel like, while he would have agreed with the actual, I guess, violent act that Renee was thinking about, he wouldn't want her to stain her reputation or her conscience. But he's someone that can take that on, kind of like a sin eater or something like that. So I feel like it heavily implies that he did. Kind of reminds me of The Departed. I don't know if you've seen that, but when Marky Mark comes at the end and you get rid of the bad guy, which was great. But yeah, what do you think? Do you think it's was Harvey? Do you think maybe the mob came a calling or something?
That's an option. That's an option. I mean, it is again, there are implications, but it is not clear.
Yeah.
And I do think it's interesting that, like you said, I think, and Harvey has been rebooted a couple of times. We have different versions. I mean, literally, we have a as you implied, he's a more cleaned up physical version in this storyline. Whether he's a dirty cop or a rough cop or hanging out with Gordon, he's improved his game. Whether that's what we're to think, but I like the idea that whether it's his reputation, his past, whatever it is, whether he did this or not, he could have done it, but he wouldn't have wanted Renee to have done it.
Yeah. Yep. The key, though, that was a bit of a question mark. So it does come back to the key. And then Montoya asks him where his key is, and he said he must have lost it. I mean, I guess
that to me is the strongest indication.
Yeah, but why would he have lost it? Did he literally lock him up and throw away the key, you think?
I'm guessing that is perhaps a metaphor. He is using Jim's metaphor.
Okay.
That he lost that he went over the line.
Gotcha.
That he that to me is the closest thing to a confession.
Yeah.
That we'll get from him. I mean, that's part of the evidence to me that he went back and finished the job.
Yeah.
Was that he's sort of saying that that balance, that responsibility that we got in the first issue.
Mm-hmm.
He threw that away. He lost that.
Yeah,
That's what he lost, not the physical object.
Mm-hmm. So we can talk about the Jim and Batman scenes. We've got a rough one near the beginning and then comes back again. Man. Do you think Jim owes Batman any explanation? This is the first one there.
No.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
no. But I don't mind that Batman thinks that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Relationships are like that. Friendships are like that. Even pseudo parental, literal parental relationships are like that. Any mentor mentee relationship, any human relationship, the expectations of the various parties are not always aligned, are rarely aligned.
Yeah.
That's part of the gunk of humanity that we have to deal with.
Guess I see it as hypocritical though, because I think,
because you hate Batman.
I just think he's a jerk. That's all. I want him to be held accountable for his actions. But he rushes off, that whole no man's land situation. He's gone and Jim didn't get any sort of notification. So that's, I'm like, oh, Batman, maybe you should practice what you preach. But
yes.
Another childish act where he's just like walks away from the conversation, which is interesting.
But they do have a more reasonable talk at the end.
They do have a more reasonable talk.
So there is a reconciliation, but at least a restoration of the relationship, I think.
Yeah. And I'm glad it came back to actually some of those no man's land conversation, no man's land. And it's in his garden and everything. So it's nice, a symbolic location, which I liked. Yeah. So it's a much better, once he comes back, I'm glad it wasn't left with the angry words and he comes back again. And so I like that. But I like also that Jim, another person that I think can speak truth to Batman, says, again, it's not about you, right? The world doesn't revolve around you, Batman. It's just time for him to go. And he was thinking of Sarah as well, which was sad. I was thinking, oh, what would Sarah do if she were here? So, yeah. Do you feel like for Jim... well, maybe I'll save this question. Yeah, any
for who?
Sorry. No, I mean save it for the overall.
Okay.
Yeah. For who? Yeah, I kick you off. I bring someone else on, and then I ask them questions that I refuse to ask you. Could you imagine? That'd be really interesting. No. Any other thoughts? Yeah, on Gotham Knights 13.
No.
Okay. So now I've got these bigger questions here. So I'll start with the one that you thought I was going to ignore you. Do you feel like this was always the way that Jim would go out and retire? Do you feel like he would always be forced out in this way? Or do you think there would ever be a peaceful leaving?
Again, you're talking fictional versus reality, right? Because at some point, at X number of years on the film, you have to forced retirement at some point, right? This is not an elected position; it's an appointed position, and there is, I'm sure, a mandatory retirement age. But ignoring all of that stuff, I think he has come up through the system, and even though he has been tangentially or intersected with this whole other world of Batman and his family, that I think he would probably, I don't have a problem with him retiring and saying, whether it's 25 years, 30 years, I've done my duty. I trust the system. I trust the people I've hired. I trust, okay, maybe not Bullock to take over, but I trust Montoya or Crispus Allen. There are people, there are deputy commissioners, et cetera. The department existed before me, though to be fair, it was a corrupt hellscape. But and he's turned that around, and at some point you say, I can leave a legacy behind. And part of that legacy would be the organization.
Yeah.
and the people that he's entrusted to run it. So
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, I would hope that he would leave on a high, that it
Mm-hmm.
would be a peaceful transitioning, and that, I've done my job and my duty to the city, and now I'm going to go off. But I also feel like he is that type of man that would have to be forced out. Like there's still more
What
to do.
was it? The last one we talked about? I can't remember what show it would be on, but did we talk about one where he got fired?
Oh,
Did
that's
we talk
interesting.
about that? I think there was a storyline at some point where he got fired, and I
Yeah,
seem
and
to remember.
Sarah was the commissioner. She was
Right.
temporarily commissioner.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
So I like this version of it more than that
yeah.
one, though we always knew that one was going to be temporary. But
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I can see it. And um yeah, I wish it were under better circumstances, if only in terms of Sarah still being alive, because I feel like this man has endured so much trauma and tragedy that you wish it weren't. But I think it's just the name of the game in Gotham, and I think he realized that coming down from Chicago, that this was a rough and
right.
tumble city. So yeah, but yeah, I feel like he leaves in a great way, and he's got, for the most part, I think, people that he can trust. Aiken seems like an okay guy, even
Hmm.
though Batgirl did not shake his hand. Yeah.
To be fair, that was social distancing and
Oh
six
boy,
foot
he's
rule
wearing
and
gloves. Batman wears gloves.
whatever. You don't need to bring your bat hate.
Yeah. I said I hate people who hate people, and I guess
Well,
I'm that person.
you know what,
Yeah.
Stella? I
Yeah.
hate people who hate people who hate people. So there.
Oh my gosh. Isn't there that
Boom.
quote of something that I love everyone except people from the Netherlands? It's some sort of joke. I can't remember. It's like something, people who hate people and people from the Netherlands or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. I can't remember. But anyways,
No, that was about as good as Tim's jokes during the issue.
that's
So
because
that
I
was
don't
good.
remember it. I'll look it up while you're talking about this next question. So we were talking about just how fluidly this thing came together and that it's pretty well connected. Do you feel like the transitions between issues were strong?
I think the ending of each issue was strong, and that's the skill. The sort of you have to leave it with some level of cliffhanger, some level of drama.
Mm,
Um, I thought I thought there was some strength there, though I think some of them stood alone better as individual issues and individual chapters than other ones did. But it's a collected story, and again, from what I understand, it came out in a pretty quick fashion. These are not, it it's. I don't think we didn't get any um, particular title repeated. I mean, I think it occurred across basically 1 month of all the titles of
hmm.
all the titles in the Bat family. So it was a cohesive, coherent story, and I thought that was a strength.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the only one that I felt like the transition wasn't the best was into Catwoman,
Hmm.
just because I would have liked more of an intro to this chase game, but it does
Right.
come right after the Harley letting them know where Catwoman is. So I guess there's enough connective tissue between the two. But otherwise, yeah, I think they do a great job. And yeah, I don't think the story would work if it were in one monthly book. I think
Right.
what really helps it is that it was published within 1 month and reading it in one sitting. That's how I did it anyways.
Right.
Or two
And
cities.
and the trick is when you've got 7 or 8 titles and you want to tell a story across it, you also have to make each chapter, you have to make that title character an important piece of it. So you have to have a Catwoman chapter because Catwoman's book is being published this month. You have to have a Birds of Prey chapter. You have to, as opposed to say you have to have a Robin, you have to have a Nightwing. They each have to have
Yeah.
their own focuses, as opposed to say what the CW does when they have their crossovers,
Right.
right? Where it's basically 5 episodes of miscellaneous WB content. It seems like it's like the the Flash episode of the crossovers don't necessarily feel like Flash episodes. They're just part 2 of 5 or part 3 of 7 or part, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I think here, I think they did a better job of making each chapter, giving the appropriate character, if to the case that there was one, giving Batgirl shines in the Batgirl story, Robin shines, etc. They shine, they star in their book.
Yep, very much so. So I found the quote. I thought it came from Austin Powers. It does. It was in Goldmember, and Austin Powers' father says this. He says, there are only two things I hate in this world: people who are intolerant of other people's cultures and the Dutch. So there's the quote that I was struggling to get out. That was the joke. So anyway, there you go. Okay. Do you feel like there are more meanings behind the title?
Yes, I think it's, it's a case of using a dramatic bit of police language, and then, perhaps taking it both in the case of our killer, maybe in the case of Bullock towards the end, of bringing them down. Is that what you're thinking?
I feel like that's possible, and that they lost Jim anyway, right? He's still alive,
that's
but
true.
they lost him from the force. So I feel like there might be more than just that. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the surface, and most importantly, it is that there was an officer down, and that's the call that goes out when that happens.
Now, let me say this, that I know that this is the July episode.
Yep.
But I love the fact that we are, in fact, recording this on Father's Day weekend.
Oh.
So happy Father's Day, Commissioner Gordon. And happy pseudo Father's Day, Alfred.
Yeah. And yeah, we're recording it on the day.
Not so much happy Father's Day to Bruce, because it's a little
well,
shakier
because he
there.
abused his child, one of his children, in this.
Yeah, it's imperfect.
Okay. Yeah, we're also recording on the day that The Last of Us Part 2 comes out. So after this is done, I'm scooting over to GameStop and...
all right, bye. Fly on, bad lovers. Bye.
Goodbye. And it is also, probably most importantly of all, Juneteenth, which is great. So... Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. So this is, I call it it's like the summer blockbuster for me for this podcast. And I would consider it an event since it is going over several issues. Definitely. How do you feel like this story compares to other stories? And it is smaller than, Contagion or No Man's Land, but just in your reading and everything, how would you feel like this crossover rates?
I enjoyed it a lot. I think it was very well done. And again, I don't know the editorial hand of Idelson and Schreck very well, but I think that side of it, keeping the trains running and keeping it organized and having those consistent covers, having that trade dress, so all of those little aspects of just putting the thing together, I think was impressive. And again, I certainly give Dixon and Brubaker and Rucka most of the credit for the story, but like you said, I mean, I think everyone involved did a pretty good job.
Would you recommend this to someone who's starting out in Batman comics? Do you feel like this is new reader friendly?
I think it's not bad for that, because you get to meet the whole family, a whole bunch of the family, and I think the writing is good enough that you can interpret and see and intuit the relationships that are there. You don't always need, and this is Bruce (parentheses Batman Wayne), and this is Barbara Gordon, who used to be Batgirl, but is not. I mean, you don't need all those asterisks and all of that. You can figure it out. And I think, and again, realistic or adult or mature, those aren't, words you necessarily odd definitions when you apply them to comics, but it certainly had that little more grown-up feel to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is exceptionally well written. I think that even though it's not a huge crossover, I think it deserves to be up there in the towers of crossovers. I don't know, the pillars of crossovers. I think it is for the most part new reader friendly, though someone who is looking for Batman, I feel like it's not a Batman
Right.
story. I mean, it's
Right. It's a
honestly,
Batman family story. It's
yeah,
that, the greater world.
and
Again, I mean,
GCPD.
it's a GCPD. I mean,
Yeah.
I read them the other way around. I read GCPD first,
Hmm.
and then came back to this the other way around. But
Yeah.
obviously, the DNA is there.
Yeah. And however much I rag on Batjerk, I think for a new reader, I wouldn't want to put this for it, because then you're
Right.
you're getting a really bad opinion of Batman and how he acts here. And, while I do focus on these times, he doesn't act like that all the time. But
I mean, the nice thing is a quote unquote new reader
yeah.
is going to be bringing knowledge of Batman and Dick Grayson and Catwoman and Barbara Gordon and Commissioner Gordon, at least those core characters.
Yeah.
Not Tim and not Cass and not Azrael necessarily.
Mhm.
They might not know those characters, but just from cultural osmosis.
Yeah.
Sort of if you're on the TV show 50 some years ago, everybody knows who
Yeah.
you are. And so,
That's true.
this is not going to be, I don't think someone's going to be scarred by reading
Yeah.
this interpretation, this version of Batman.
Absolutely. Yep. And I will just say or repeat what Alan had said several minutes ago, that I highly, highly, highly recommend Gotham Central.
Yes.
It is one of the best things that I've ever read from DC Comics. And it's a cop procedural, but even calling it that almost shortchanges
Right.
it, and really getting to know Renee Montoya and crafting her into the great character that she is now.
Mhm.
So, and this is, a great gateway. So if you enjoyed
Right.
Officer Down, I really recommend that you go and pick up Gotham Central. And I think there are just 4 trades, so they might be oversized.
Yeah, so I think there's about 40 issues.
Yeah. So it's completely. So wait for like a BOGO sale on. BOGO on. I know now we're talking money on Comixology. Look at how excited he gets. I think that's how I did it actually on Comixology, because you're getting.
I believe I got
prices
them from
too.
the public library.
Oh, there you go. There you go. That also, because that's for free.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Any other thoughts before we give a rating on this story?
No, it's excellent. Spoilers for my rating.
Okay. Well, let's see. Out of 10 handcuff keys, out of 10 handcuff keys, yeah, we'll go with that. What would you give this story?
I mean, it depends what the standard is. It's an A. It's an A. So is it 10? Is it 9.5? Is it 9? Like, do you say, is the standard the perfect story? In which case it falls short of that. In other words, is there any story that I'd give a 10 to? I don't know. But if I were going to give 10 to multiple stories, this would be one of them. That's the closest you're going to get out of me, Bowman. Okay. I'm sorry. It's an A. It's an A. Okay.
I feel you there. And I actually really want to give it a 10 out of 10 handcuffs. I think the only thing that detracts from it is the art on those 2 issues, Nightwing and Robin, to be honest.
That's fair.
But story, I mean, honestly, yeah. So it's like, 9.5 if you're bringing in the art, but a 10. I mean, I just think it's really well written. And even though I hate how Batman acts in it, it's reasonable given his character. And I really feel for Barbara, but I thought it was an amazing story. Thank you so much for being on with me to do this. I'm glad we got to do this one. Finally, it took a year at least of like, I think it'll be next summer. So here we are.
I did read this a long time ago.
I know. I remember
like 8
when you
months
told
ago.
me.
It's okay. I'll read this. I'll make my notes. When are we recording? 2047? What?
You were ready way in advance. I was like,
prepared. I didn't realize you were that organized.
Whew. Well, I've got.
I mean, in talking to Tom, it doesn't seem that way. He doesn't seem to feel that way. But
whatever. He's the intern. He doesn't know organization from messy sock drawer.
Good point. Good point.
Okay. Well, next up is Chris's cornucopia of curiosities, which is, of course, you can't watch on the video, but it will be in the audio. And now I think this is it, isn't it? This is the reason why people come on my show. Actually, before we do that, could we, you've already shown yours, but oddly, I tell people, this is only the second time, but I told Carolyn and Donovan, I was like, could you please wear some item of comic paraphernalia or pop culture? And so, yeah, so this is what are you wearing segment. So we've got Doom. There he is.
And, I would make a pre-literature recommendation would be the ongoing Doctor Doom comic from Marvel Comics, which is on a little bit of a hiatus in these coronavirus days. I think it's scheduled, the next issue is scheduled to come out in September or something, but it's an excellent book.
What's the creative team on that?
Christopher Cantwell and Salvador LaRocca.
Oh, okay. So great
good.
art. Yeah, Cantwell sounds familiar, but I'm not sure that I've read anything. Now, are you saying, do you really like it because it's actually good? Or is it because it's like, Doom is your favorite character, so / person in the world? So
let's just say that my views of Doctor Doom and Doctor Doom related content is not dissimilar to the view of this podcast regarding one Barbara Gordon. That there is a bent towards stories that treat that character well.
Okay. I feel you there. Yeah, and so I've got a Captain Marvel hat on, and then I was gonna wear my Last of Us shirt since it's Last of Us, but then I realized, wait, I'm gonna do a special show too. So I ended up wearing the Batgirl. Got all the Batgirls on it.
Nice.
Even Bet is there. So there you go. The Bat-Girl is represented. So
one of the and one of the things we've been doing during quarantine over here is the latest, I guess it was last year's iteration of DC Superhero Girls cartoons.
Yeah.
And Babs is a lead character there.
She sure is.
And is a very interesting take.
She's hyperactive.
A little bit. Just a little bit.
Yeah. Oh boy. Okay, so now I guess I'll type this in my document so I have it. The what are you wearing segment. Oh boy. Okay. So now is the segment where everyone only comes on the show for this. It is literature recommendation time. I will defer to my guest for his list before I give mine.
Well, I am bringing a novel to the table. And this is a novel of a pure woman, faithfully presented. Gifted and beautiful peasant, descended from a decayed aristocratic family. Our heroine is betrayed by two men, one rich and violent, the other intellectual and hypocritical. She is one of the most striking and tragic heroines of classic literature. The compelling story is first, you should appreciate this, Stella, a romantic tale of love gone astray. Second, it's an indictment of the British class system, revered by some Victorians. And finally, it's an inquiry into what fates control the human destinies. This is the novel that lifted Thomas Hardy to a position of world fame.
Oh my gosh.
Is Tess of the D'Urbervilles.
You are a sick individual.
Greatest novel ever. And of course, we do have to tell our Thomas Hardy joke, right? If you want it to have a happy ending, you start here on the last page, and then you work your way forward.
Like a manga novel.
You read it like a manga, and it ends happy. That's the way it ends happy. It starts that way. It starts kind of a downer. Spoilers, but
man. So yeah, this is. I mean, for people who don't know Alan and my relationship, I mean, this is a constant thing. And I've read Tess of the D'Urbervilles. I was very much engaged, but also I wanted to chuck the book across the room. I did finish it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the biggest issue I had for this segment was if I brought the hardcover, if I brought the paperback, if I showed you the
how many
the
do
audio
you have?
The audiobook version. Just those three at this point,
three.
I think.
Okay. Well,
I think. And then we've got Far from the Madding Crowd,
oh my
Caster
gosh.
Bridge, all the other Thomas Hardy Oof.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thanks for that. I guess I should have seen it coming. Do you have anything else to recommend?
Between Tess and Doctor Doom, is there anything else? Is there? Is
Okay.
there?
Okay. You heard it here, folks. Well, I've got some things to recommend. Not as many as last time, which is good. I read Assassin's Creed Odyssey by Gordon Doherty, and it's basically a novelization of the game, and it's in Cassandra's perspective. I read Doctor Sleep by Stephen King, which is the sequel to The Shining, and Danny is now Dan Torrance. And
Didn't I hear you talk about that? Did you guys talk about that on required reading? Someone talked
I may
about
have
that recently.
mentioned
Okay,
it, or at
fine.
least, I mean, because we just did The Green Mile.
That's right.
And so I think I mentioned that. I picked something that probably maybe people wouldn't expect for a first, King. And yeah. Let's see. On Goodreads. Oh, this is in a foreign language, unless I'm having problems. But it's a sequel, and I really like the villain. The antagonist is great, Rose the Hat. So I recommend that. And then I did watch the film, which is a marriage between a sequel of the film The Shining as well as the book. So I'm not sure if people thought highly of it or not, but it was pretty good. I did finish listening the complete stories and poems of Edgar Allan Poe, which was 40 hours. So you
Nice.
can
Ay,
imagine how
caramba.
long that took me to read
The
all of that.
good thing is that put you in a positive headspace.
Oh my
You,
gosh. Yeah, they
you,
were
you
all
know what you need to cheer you up after that? You know what's
actually,
going to
that
cheer you up
probably
after
is,
that?
yeah, that
See?
probably is lighter. There's one about a cat that this guy abuses this cat and then the cat dies and then he gets a new cat. He murders his wife because he's angry at the cat. He sticks the wife in the wall, but he actually enclosed the cat with the wife. And so there's this investigation and the cat is making noise and then they find the dead body. It's like what is this? I read Prodigal Summer by Barbara Kingsolver, which will be the next episode of Required Reading with
Nice.
Tom and Stella. And then my last one.
Tom.
That's where it should be, honestly. Thank you, sir. And then finally, The Opposite of Fate, Memoirs of a Writing Life by Amy Tan. And so several essays
nice.
and things like that, which was great. Yeah, I've read her Joy Luck Club. So that's my other intro to her. But she's humorous and funny. A lot of her stuff. She's got a good wit about her. So those are my recommendations. So that's it. So before, of course, we close out, I'd like for you, well, number one, thank you. I want to thank you for everything, for the recaps and
You're
just
welcome.
being here. Yeah, I had a lot of fun and I'm glad we got to do this. And thanks for being willing to do it on video. Can you tell listeners where they can find you?
Most of what we do is at the Relatively Geeky Podcast Network. That's me and my late 20s child, M. The two of us host a bunch of different shows, mainly my solo show, the Quarter Bin Podcast, which is where we talk about the best kinds of comics. Cheap comics that often, maybe not always, but often cost around 25 cents given inflation over a number of years. Plus, I like to think of it as a flexible attitude towards definitions. Language changes, Stella. Yeah. Words, meanings change over the years. And I think it's important for you, I don't mean listeners, I mean you, to keep that in mind. Okay. Thank you. That is also the home of Doomspeak, about the greatest hero of all of comics, second only maybe to Barbara Gordon. And that is Dr. Doom. Have you considered shipping that? Anyway, but the key, those are available at relativelygeekypodcast.blogspot.com. And then a few years ago, Em and I also got a side project going based on our interest, not just in pop culture and comics, but religion and theology and church history. And we came up with Darkness to Light, and which we've done some episodes of as well. And negotiations have long been underway to get one Miss Stella Bowman to appear on Darkness to Light as a guest. And one day it might happen.
And I've got the comics that we're going to do.
Shh, spoilers.
Okay. I won't say what it is.
Please.
But yeah. By Charles.
That is correct. Don't call him Chuck.
Yeah, he doesn't go by that time. Yeah, I've actually listened to several episodes. I think across the. Yeah, because you had I think you had a Turok tie-in, didn't you, issue or episode? Sorry. And so I listened to that and Watchmen and Kingdom Come. So I've listened to several. It's just I'm not a regular. Yeah.
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for coming on.
It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Yep. Remember, you can send any questions or comments to backrolltheoracle@gmail.com. If any of the listeners or viewers have anything to say to you, do you want to give your email address?
relativelygeeky@gmail.com.
There you go. And he's also on the Twitters under 2 handles. One of them is a nicer person and the other one is not. So one of them will plague you and troll you with doom images with him and a teddy bear, and the other one will not. So just be aware, depending on which person you address. Yeah. You can also find the show on Google Play and Stitcher, as well as, of course, YouTube. And now you can subscribe. So it's just Backroll the Oracle, no spaces for the YouTube channel. And I mean, the bonus about that is, number one, you're getting this way early because this audio episode is coming out in July, but you're going to get the video in June. So there's the bonus. But you get to see if I make mistakes, which I did during this episode. But you don't get any musical cues, so you won't know really what I'm playing or anything. Like the show on Facebook or follow it on Twitter @Backroll the Oracle. Follow the Batman universe on Facebook and Twitter as well. And remember,
fly on, Babs lovers.
We're not there.
Oh, sorry.
Remember to support the Batman. It's like you have Tourette's. Support the Batman universe by subscribing to Patreon. And once again, thanks to Mile High Comics for sponsoring Backroll the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast. For next episode, which will be another July episode, and the video will definitely come out in July as well. It's actually going to be a The Last of Us Part 2 special. And I feel like with all the things that I want to, and I feel like we need to talk about, that it's going to be a long one. I've told my co-host like maybe 3 hours, so just be prepared for that. And that might be an explicit tag, just because if I put in any clips from the game, that's a mature game and it's got the F word and such. So just be aware of that, and content that we'll be talking about. So I'm excited about that.
F word, just to clarify, you mean fantastic or for?
Friends.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got
F is for friends that do stuff together. Okay. I'm gonna kick this man off so I can go to GameStop and get my game and load it up.
Fly on, Babs lovers.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Until next time.
Fly on, Babs lovers.
Ooh, boy. Yeah. Thank you for calming down on that last one.